Okay, good day and welcome, Jonathan, to
Hi.
this live stream.
Pleasure
So
to be
we
here.
wanted to bring you on today because we have been running a top list of the fastest e-commerce website in Sweden for since January. And if you bring that list on screen, we will see that as of May, you were running at the top of this list. You've been hovering at top 5 for a long time. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that if you look at the top 20 list we have, the average weighted score that we calculate is to break into the top 20, you need to reach a performance score using the Lighthouse, Google Lighthouse method for 63. And I've never seen anyone go beyond 50 that didn't make this a strategy. And I think when we launched this list, you were a little bit further down, but you saw it as a challenge. You let us know that listen, we're going to climb on this list, and sure thing, you did. You're right now the champion of this list. And what is interesting to me about your website is that it's in my view, outside looking in, I think this is an e-commerce website that ticks all the boxes. It has good media assets. It has good banners. It has a good user interface. It has a great search. It has the regular service support features. I also think there's is there video on this site also?
On some of the products.
Yeah, so there's video and everything, and yet you keep outperforming everyone in Sweden right now. So I think this is interesting to me because it shows that you don't really have. It seems like you don't have to compromise and to do a high performing, high converting e-commerce website that doesn't have to compromise on performance, and that is interesting to me because performance where you have to compromise is not very attractive because I think every brand and every retailer wants to make sure you can really own the experience. And I think there's a lot of great things on this website that really proves that you don't have to do that. So I think the conversation today is to see whether this is the case. Jonathan, can you just start with let us know who you are, what you do, and what your relationship to Johnells is?
Yeah, so I'm Jonathan. I'm the CEO of Hyperlab. We've been working with Johnells for, I think, 2 years or something like that, as their main front-end partner, building and maintaining their storefront. That was the short of it. At Hyperlab, we're working primarily with e-commerce, with a lot of focus on performance, and have been doing so for the last 4 or 5 years, working exclusively with headless platforms, trying to create the best possible user experiences without compromising on performance.
And when you did start this project, was it you driving the conversation on performance, or was the client, or when did that conversation start?
So we came in and we were handed their existing site as they were switching partners. And at that point, the client wasn't happy with the performance and they wanted to improve it. So we have been doing incremental improvements over time. And then last year, they agreed to do a bit of a bigger push, and we rewrote the site from scratch. And that's kind of what enabled the level of performance we're seeing now.
Yeah, because I think that what I've seen is you don't get above 50 on an average Google Lighthouse score without having made this a priority. And I think getting over 80, 85, you're inching close to 90 is really something else. And I think really have to congratulate you. I think this is a great achievement, and I think it should be celebrated. And I think it's for us to be inspired by as well. So when you get to this performance, when looking from the outside, I can bring the site back up again, but if you look at the site from the outside, it seems like you didn't have to compromise. Have you had to compromise?
No, I don't think so. We designed the site when we did the rewrite. We did a small facelift throughout the site as well, and Like that was never constrained by we can't do this or we can't do that because of performance. We designed the site out of like how can we create the best possible user experience given the other constraints we're working with, and we made it a priority to build it in a performant way.
So I think generally, I think you told me before that there's two ways to attack performance. Either try to fix bad performance, or you start out building for performance. And I guess that, as you said, you rewrote from scratch. When you're building for performance, what is your strategy? What are the things you need to contain in order to make sure you sustain performance?
Yeah, I think they're rarely, with possibly the exception of third-party scripts, performance is like it's a single thing. It's more like a death by 1,000 cuts. So you need to be mindful of performance throughout the whole process. So everything from how you write your front-end code to how you set up your server caching to how you do image scaling and how you load your third-party code. All of those things have a huge impact on performance and needs to be considered.
I think there's a script we like to use. It's an open source, I think it's a free service called Request Map. We can try to put it in the chat later, but this is a tool that essentially doesn't bring new information, but it visualizes information. And we find it useful to use this tool to help customers understand how you can destroy performance using third-party scripts. I think the purpose here is to see that this is the first-party scripts that you guys are contributing with. And I think what you want to see in this map is a sizable portion of the scripts going towards the first party, because it means that you are in control. Then you have, I guess these are third-party fonts you're using to load the type fonts for the website. And then you have the silver bullet and the destroyer of all things good, the Google Tag Manager, because this can be a Trojan horse if you don't do it right. Can you talk a little about how you need to work carefully with Tag Manager and how to approach third-party scripts in general?
Yeah. So in general, if you can get away with not using third-party scripts, that's the preferable solution any time of the day. But if you're stuck with those, or if you can't switch them up for something better, then loading them in as defensive manner as possible is probably the best approach. This means deferring the load of them until you've initialized the rest of your site, so that your chat widget isn't hindering your menu from opening, for example, or other things that will have a negative impact on your user experience. And the other thing you can do also is to defer stuff that's off screen. So if you have a really heavy thing in the footer of your site, don't load it until someone scrolls down. Stuff like that.
I think one of the most common examples is the customer service chat box. I think the worst performing chat box in the business is unfortunately Zendesk, which is also the most popular one. So I think that is one of the things we're referring to. Like I think there's this. I think one of the biggest enemies towards performance is when you meet a salesperson from, in this case, maybe Inbox, and they say, it's very simple to use our service. It's just a few lines of code. That usually means that you're inserting a JavaScript, and that JavaScript is essentially a blank check for the third party to insert anything and take control over our user experience. And I think that is what you're referring to, right? To control the third-party script to make sure that we are in charge. We are deciding when we're triggering them, not them.
Yeah, and to the extent that you need to use those third-party scripts, make sure you load them in a defensive manner. We're not employing this for Johnells, but there are ways to basically fake that chat pop-up. So you're using first-party script to show a placeholder, and then you defer the load of the heavier third-party script until the rest of the site is already live. And that's a way to also make sure it's not blocking the user interaction.
And I think you also told me that like one obvious downside of letting third parties load whatever they want is that we're butchering performance and the user experience, but it's also a security issue, right?
Yeah. So anytime you're loading an external asset onto your site, you open up another attack vector. So there's one more thing that can get compromised, and that will grant an attacker more or less like complete access to your visitors' data. So a lot of times when you see attacks towards like checkouts or whatnot in online shopping, it's through third-party scripts that haven't been secured properly.
That's interesting. And I think you mentioned to me that you're using an AI product recommendation engine, but you're not allowing it to load to the store to the client side.
Exactly. So we're using Findify alongside, and it's integrated on the server level into the underlying front-end framework. And that gives us kind of the best of both worlds. We're kind of tap into the full potential that comes with personalizing everything, but we don't need to load a bunch of client-side JavaScript that would make the site slower.
So is that happening in the product listing and the search field, or are these called? Okay. So essentially, like you want to personalize these interactions on a one-to-one level, and that's normally done maybe through you can go with maybe Depict. It could be Nosto, and then you just insert a script. And I think that one of the reason people do this is that it's easy to get started. I think right now Depict is very popular because they insert a script in Google Tag Manager, and then they simply inject products into the DOM tree, and that's super convenient because you can sidestep your DevOps team, but it also means that there's no longer any technical correlation between that service and our service. And what you decided to do is to use these products that are fundamentally quite good, but you're doing it on a server-side level instead.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and that gives us a lot of really nice benefits in addition to performance as well. As it's a core part of the underlying framework, we can mix and match these, and we can even swap them out if you'd like to. So you can go from using your platform's standard product fetching, and then swap it out for Findify, or swap it out for Algolia or something else. And it's a relatively small change. Your front end at large is more or less unaffected. Which opens up a whole new set of possibilities for A/B testing these and actually finding out which are good.
So how would you say that would you in general say that server-side integrations are better than client-side, or is it not that simple?
It depends on what you're doing, right? But as a rule of thumb, I would pick a server-side integration any day of the week.
Okay.
It gives you as a developer more control of what's actually happening. And if a service is slow, for example, you can implement caching on top of that to make up for the poor performance. And it's mostly a matter of control, I'd say. And also, the less code you send to your browser, the faster the site will be.
And I think that one of the things I think the business value of performance, as I see it, is it creates a more superior user experience. Even if you don't sell more, you have more satisfied customers. But B, it has a direct correlation with conversion. C, Google is now, as of June of this year, incorporating search results more heavily, performance more heavily into the organic search rank. And as a consequence of that, it's also affecting your visibility when you're buying ads. I think that the business case is on-site conversion, organic search rank, and paid rank. So I think I try to tell people, like, try to view performance the same way you do with SEO, where you need to have an ongoing evaluation and an ongoing benchmarking. How do you track performance, and how do you notice if you're doing anything wrong?
So we have Google Lighthouse set up in our own development pipeline. So anytime someone makes a change, those tests will run, and we'll see a weighted score of, I think they do 3 separate runs, and you get an average of those, since the scores can vary a bit from run to run. So we do that on every change. And then we also have performance monitoring set up, so we can see trends over time.
Yeah. How much are you affected? There was a new version of Google Lighthouse. It was version 8 was launched recently. I assume this is correlating with the new search rank that Google introduced, where they're putting more emphasis on the cumulative layout shift. I think it's more bigger contributing factor right now. I also think that what else changed? Did we see a bigger impact of blocking time?
No, I think they removed the time to interactive from the core vital scoring, and then they increased the weighting of the cumulative layout shift. As I think it's a better measure of like the user experience. Like if things are jumping around, it's annoying.
Yeah.
And the time to interactive metric is also a bit of it can be a bit of a red herring.
Is it stressful to know that there are external factors like the versioning of these tools that you're not prepared for, and it sort of stabs you in the back a little bit as you're working, or what is your experience with the new versioning that's coming out on a regular basis?
Like, we try to keep an eye on that and be aware of the changes when they're coming. I think the switch from to version, I think it was 6 or 7, when they revamped a lot of the metrics, took pretty much everyone by surprise. Like, a lot of sites were performing really, really well, and then suddenly they weren't. And I know we got a few calls of clients asking, what happened to my site? Why is it so much slower? Even though it was exactly the same, as performant as before, just the metrics had changed. No, but we try to keep on top of that. I think that's the short answer, and it's an ever-changing landscape. If you're not like into that and like that, then I don't think web performance or e-commerce is a good area to be in, honestly.
I had a colleague. We were just trying to explain to a customer. I think one of the reasons why we were launching this top list is that we wanted to have a more unified way of thinking around performance, agreeing on a metric and tracking it over time. We are tracking every night in our tracking system, and I think you need to have a consistency in what you're doing, because the website can change. I think it's important to not stress out of a single fluke in the numbers. But one of my colleagues told one of our clients that you have to understand, website performance is not an exact science. I was laughing a little bit at it, but it can be fluctuating a lot, and I think it's making it a part of the development DNA or decision-making DNA, helping. I think the tracking we're using help customers understand what affects performance, and when you buy a third-party tool, that it can tank because of that. And sometimes you're making active decisions or you need to try out things. Okay, this one worked, but it lowered the performance. Okay, let's improve that, and let's keep whatever we did, but let's find a way to do it that's more efficient, I think.
Yeah, and I think the request map you showed earlier is a good example of this as well. Like, why the scores fluctuate so much. You're effectively talking to 10, 20, 30, 40 different services, and they all need to stay performant. And you're doing that over a network that also is changing every single moment due to other traffic peaks. And if it's for right now, it's the football season, and if everyone's streaming the latest game, networks will be congested, and everything will be slower. So everything goes into this.
Yeah, and I think that for one example, I think there's a tool we had a number that was going in different directions all the time. We're doing different tasks and was going. The difference in results were a little bit high. Then we realized it was a random deploy of Hotjar, the tool that tracks all the mouse activity and is recording the user session. That's a very, very heavy script, and if you're using it too extensively, it starts popping up in the numbers. I think the tracking bots were randomly seeing these scripts happening. And I think those are examples of tools that can have a quite material impact on the experience. And sometimes you just too easily just throw them in there.
I think
so
another good example of this is A/B testing when you do it client side. A lot of the times you have option A and option B, and they're performing kind of equally. And then you actually, option C, which is the same page but without the A/B test, usually always outperform them because the A/B test itself is tanking the performance of the site.
Yeah, that's a good factor, and also a reason to have, again, server-side A/B testing. You can do that as well. Yeah. So I think essentially for me over the past year, the biggest takeaway has been be aware of third-party scripts. They are your friend, but if you can find a way to either use them in a performance friendly way or replace them by server-side, I think that is preferable. And if the salespeople tell you to put it in the head, put it in the footer instead. So a couple of final questions before we jump off today. I think that I think in the top list we see no clear winner when it comes to platform. We don't see a clear preference for a single page application or multi-page application. So my conclusion is more about the architecture you're bringing into the storefront you're building. Is more about who you're using first and third party scripts. But what has been the overall strategy you guys have used to achieve performance?
So we've been working with e-commerce in a lot of different ways. We've been building multi-page sites, completely server rendered. We've been building client-side apps that have been both server rendered for SEO purposes and then hydrated and client-side rendered from there on out. And we've built everything in between. And I think the main reason for wanting to go with a client-side app, if done well, is that it allows for a better customer experience. It's about the small little details, like the drawer menu on your phone, like having it animate away rather than things just jarringly jump around when you navigate the page. That's something you can do with a single page app, but you can't do with a multi-page one. So tiny things like that makes me prefer the single page version. But the way it's done most of the time results in really, really bad performance. And that's true already, like on the Scandinavian or Nordic market. But if you go out into the world, it's even more of a problem because poorly implemented client-side apps usually pull in 1 or 2 megabytes of first-party JavaScript, and then in addition, 1 to 5 megabytes of third-party JavaScript. And that will completely thrash even a mid-range Android phone. I saw this. Actually, maybe if I can share my screen, I can show it to you real quick.
Now I'm curious, so you can.
Let's see if I can do it. Just maybe I haven't prepared this other than opening up the preview. Let's go. So can you see this, by the way?
Yeah. Yes.
So this is from a guy called Alex something. It goes by slightly late on Twitter. He's been monitoring mobile phone performance over time. And each of these lines represent. The blue are high-end iPhones. The red ones are high-end Android phones, and the yellow ones are mid-range Android phones, and then the green ones are like low-end Android phones, which are common in like really developing countries. And you can see that the mid-range Android phones have just caught up to the iPhone 6 that came out in 2014.
This is super interesting.
And like this is why if you look at the page speed insights, for example, it says your time to interactive is 10 or 15 or 25 seconds. It's because they're emulating like I think the Moto G7. So for most of us, we're never seeing that kind of performance, but that's because we're on like an iPhone 12 or a Samsung Galaxy S10 or something like that, which blows mid-range phones out of the water. But just, it's enough to go like down into mainland Europe and for these phones to be dominant in like Germany or somewhere else. And that just highlights the importance of building really performant storefronts if we want these people to have access to our services.
Yeah, and I think this speaks to, because that's another session we'll do later, but we have a real-time dashboard that we're using to track our clients' performance. And then you can get all the metrics, but you get one part of the screen with the lab data and one part of the screen with the field data. And then you can see that it's normal in Sweden, if you're only facing the Swedish market, your numbers will be closer to the red or blue lines than the green or yellow lines, because the Swedish market in general is a little bit more mature. Not everyone, but a little bit more. But if you look with our clients, if you go to Marimekko, for instance, there are serving Asia and continental Europe and all of North America. In their case, the field data is more aligned with the lab data. So I think if you're only serving the Swedish market, for sure, but once you go down to continental Europe, I can tell you people are not running iPhone 12s to the same extent. And also the connection is not as good.
It's terrible. I used to live in Germany, and you could barely get edge service sometimes. So
I think that is why you can sometimes say, I don't recognize these performance numbers on my phone, but your phone is not representative for the average consumer.
Your phone nor your network. So network speeds are also superior on the Swedish market compared to Germany, for example.
Cool, but I think this has been quite helpful, and I we're going to drop your contact information in the description, so people can reach out. But I think you've done an amazing job, and I thank you for your service, because you've shown the market that you can do an e-commerce website without any obvious compromises and still be a leader of website performance. And I think that is really, really good.
Yeah, we're aiming to get 1, 2, 3, and 4 in that list soon.
Yeah, and I think that we have put ourselves in a tough spot because our clients want us to bring them to top 20. So we are competitors in that aspect. But I think it's a good competition to have. I think there are only winners when everybody's competing. So that's great. But thank you for taking time to joining us today. I think it'll be very helpful, insightful, and we'll thank you and follow you.
It's been a pleasure.
Okay, anytime. Bye-bye.